In 1960, Sammy Davis Jr. broke yet another racial barrier by becoming the only person of color in the infamous Rat Pack.
Well, I didn't mean to move in the neighborhood.
But all his pally's considerable muscle couldn't protect Davis from the abuse he was about to face, all in the name of love. Privately, 34-year-old Davis admitted to friends he had a penchant for white women. But his liaisons were generally sexual, nothing to get serious about. Until one day in early 1960, when he walked onto the Fox lot and spied a Swedish actress named Mai Britt.
I wonder, is it because it's almost like a forbidden fruit? You know, you want what you can't have. Tell me your thoughts about that in the comments.
I was working at the time on a movie called Blue Angel, and he came into the commissary with a friend of his, an actress that worked on the movie I was working in. And I was sitting alone at the table eating lunch, and he said, who is that? And she told him, and he said, can I meet her? And she said, forget it. She's very absorbed with work and nobody gets to her or anything. And I guess that's the impression I gave because I was so enormously shy at the time.
The 24-year-old actress had been making movies in Europe since she was 18. Davis was intrigued. Britt was not. At least not visibly.
I didn't seem very interested at first, but I think I was. But sometimes you have to cool it.
Mai's apparent indifference only made Sammy want her more. Friend Amy Green Andrews remembers being at a restaurant with Davis.
And all of a sudden, Mai comes out and he starts trembling. I'm saying, what's the matter with you? He was like, what is wrong with you? You got the chills? And he said, that's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life.
In order to succeed, Sammy Davis Jr. would not take no for an answer. And that's the same way he pursued Mai Britt.
One time he had a party up at his house, and he always had a screening of movies up there, so he invited me for that. And from that time on, we started to see each other.
Davis fell hard for Britt, and the feeling was mutual. Actress Diane Carroll.
She is one of the most loving people I've ever met in my life, and she loves Sammy deeply. I think it was an experience that he'd never had because of the purity of it. That's what I saw about Mai.
Dean Martin's daughter, Dina Martin.
You would catch him out of his good eye, you know, staring at her. He really adored her.
I believe that Sammy was in love with Mai Britt. I think that there's some psychological needs, the fact that she was blonde, like Kim Novak, like he wanted to prove that he could have anyone that everybody else would want.
Why do you feel people can't see love? They can only see color. Let me know in the comments.
When Britt went to New York to shoot a movie, Davis phoned her almost every day.
He proposed actually over the telephone because at that time I was in New York City doing a movie called Murder Incorporated. And he called me there and he proposed over the phone, and I said, I think that would be wonderful.
And they had great problems because a tall, blonde, beautiful Swedish lady in the streets of New York could not walk down the street with a little black person. That was the beginning of Sammy's bodyguard. The bodyguard would go in, the limousine would open, we'd all go in, then we'd get out in a restaurant. That's how it went.
The wedding was set for October 16, 1960. That summer, Peter Lawford's brother-in-law, John F. Kennedy, ran for the Democratic presidential nomination. Kennedy was already tight with the Rat Pack, and his humanistic ideals appealed to Davis.
Sammy campaigned vigorously, going into each and every black community they could go into and getting the vote out, and he really worked very, very hard. Both he and Mai worked very, very, very hard.
But not all Democrats looked favorably on Sammy's impending wedding. Many blacks felt Davis was trying to be white. On the other hand, when Davis appeared at the Democratic National Convention, the white Alabama and Mississippi...
I never understood that. Maybe somebody can explain it for me in the comments. What does it mean when you're trying to be white or trying to be black?
Mississippi delegations booed.
in 1960, it was illegal for blacks and whites to be together in 36 states. And at least 15 states, they were still prosecuting people for doing that.
Davis worried that his marriage might harm Kennedy's chances, especially since Sinatra, a highly visible Kennedy supporter, was to be Sammy's best man. Sammy decided to postpone the wedding, and he told Sinatra before he told Mai.
He lied, and he said, I can't get the hotel room, and the rabbi can't make it, and he made all these excuses. And Frank said, you know, you don't have to do this. And he said, no, I want to.
Sammy was very close to all of the Kennedys, and with the guys, Sinatra and Dean and Peter Lawford. Because it was election time, we figured that it would be best to just postpone it for a while.
On November 8th, Kennedy beat the Republican candidate, Richard Nixon, by a narrow margin. 5 days later, Davis and Britt were married in a Jewish ceremony. After his public and private support of JFK, Davis expected to attend the inauguration, but he was in for another disappointment.
He and Mai were disinvited from the inauguration because it was an interracial couple. It was explained to them in great detail, great apologies were said, but they could not stand side by side together.
Sammy was crushed.
Sammy felt this very, very deep wound that I don't know that he ever really got over. Because here he was working so hard with the black community to get them to vote for John Kennedy.
Sinatra produced the inaugural gala, but Dean Martin, who was a close Kennedy friend for many years, boycotted the festivities.
I think he was so mad with the Kennedys for hurting Sammy so badly that Dad never even went.
In December 1960, Mai announced she was pregnant. The press went to town.
Sammy was so tired of the questions when they said, well, Sammy, what color is the baby going to be? He said, look, I don't care if the baby is polka dot. I'm going to love this child. And so then that went on, the polka dot baby went on and on.
Mai gave birth to a girl, Tracy, on July 5th, 1961. The couple later adopted 2 baby boys, Mark and Jeff.
We discussed that before we got married.
Honestly, I've never heard of Tracy. Let me know, does she do any movies, TV shows? Where's she at today?
And we both decided that there are a lot of children that needs to be taken care of, aren't always wanted, and it would be wonderful if we could help out. So we tried our best.
Mai willingly gave up her career and devoted herself to the family. But this was no Leave It to Beaver life. Son, Mark Davis.
There was a lot of times we had to stay in the house just to be safe. I mean, there was death threats. And if we went anywhere, somebody had to go with us. We were never alone.
We had, at home and on the road, we had bodyguards all the time. And they just became part of the family, kind of.
Britt learned to handle the hostility, but it wasn't always easy.
Some things, you hear them and you hear bad words towards you, but when you got to learn to, it goes in one ear and it has to go out the other, because if not, it drives you crazy. And once you've learned that, you kind of goes right through, and that. It's not as easy as that, but you have to train yourself a little.
If Mai was an adoring mother, Sammy was an absent father. Davis was on the road 50 weeks out of the year.
You might think it might be great saying, hey, you know, my father was Sammy Davis Jr. But if you didn't know him, so there's a void.
It sounds like what Sammy Davis Jr. did to his son, his father didn't do to him. His father took him into the business, whereas Sammy Davis Jr. didn't do it. But maybe you can help me understand something that was said in this video earlier that I don't understand. Now, I understand that people have a hatred for skin color. I understand that part. But They want to control other people's outcome on their life. But as soon as you try to bring control over them, it's a problem. Please explain it to me in the comments if you can.
Work wasn't the only reason Davis stayed on the road. Sammy's hectic schedule provided some escape from his emotions.
Sammy Davis Jr. was always in pain, but he didn't think about the pain when he was running. And so there was always something happening.
As he approached 39, Davis kept the candle burning at both ends.
Sammy would do 2 shows, a dinner show in Vegas, a midnight show in Vegas, and then he'd do a show for all the other performers in Vegas. And then he'd show a movie. And then maybe he'd sleep for, a couple hours, usually with his clothes on, just, fall asleep on the couch. He just didn't have time to sleep because he just had so much to do. The one person that Sammy Davis Jr. did not enjoy being alone with, and I know that as a fact, was Sammy Davis Jr.
Not that Sammy ever let himself be alone.
Women love Sammy. Women who shouldn't have loved Sammy loved Sammy. The women who Sammy shouldn't have loved, he loved back.
There were lots of them all the time, everywhere. Just lots of them. I think it made him feel really very, very good that he needed that.
Coming up.
One of the first poachers, which was Sammy and Paula Wayne, a blonde white girl, resulted in windows being shot out at the Majestic Theater.
And later,
Sammy always hated the song Mr. Bojangles because it really was talking about one of his greatest fears, of being broke.
This one was an interesting video. Tell me your thoughts about it in the comments. Be sure to like, share, watch more videos, and subscribe to the channel.